and outraged following Monday's tragic incident. I thank those who have joined in our shared call for peace in Philadelphia as we seek justice. But I'm also very disturbed by the damage being done in our communities. The looting that has taken place in several neighborhoods of Philadelphia is distressing, to say the least, and it is unacceptable. As I said yesterday, it is clear that many of these folks are in no way honoring the memory of Walter Wallace Jr. Rather, they are taking advantage of those who want to peacefully protest Walter's tragic death. Mr. Wallace's own family has repeatedly called on those creating chaos in our city to stop, stressing that they are seeking what they're seeking is justice for their loved one, not destruction. By looting, people are not only harming many retail businesses that have struggled in the midst of the pandemic, they're doing a great disservice to the many others who want to exercise their First Amendment rights by protesting. We will do everything we can to ensure that the right to assemble and to exercise free speech is protected, but we will not, not allow others to destroy property and further harm our communities. To that end, I have requested the assistance of the Pennsylvania National Guard. Their role, first and foremost, will be to safeguard property and prevent looting. They will also provide assistance to our police department and other operational departments as needed. I want to thank Governor Wolf for authorizing this assistance. In addition, I have authorized a citywide curfew, which will go into effect tonight at 9 p.m. through tomorrow, Thursday, October 29th at 6 a.m. Grocery stores, restaurants, and pharmacies may, in their discretion, choose to operate only for delivery services after 9 p.m. They should implement appropriate measures to secure their facilities and protect on-site and delivery employees. We believe these two steps are necessary in order to prevent the despicable activities we've seen in the City Solicitor Marcel Pratt and Acting Commerce Director Sylvia Gallier-Howard have joined us today to take questions on legal and business implications of these decisions. Before I wrap things up, I also want to recognize the many community members who have spoken out this week and shared their anger, questions, and concerns with us. Last night at the community meeting in West Philadelphia hosted by State Representative Joanna McClinton, I heard directly from residents with pointed and fair criticism as well as raw emotions. I promise them and I promise everyone across our city that the administration will do better. Now I'd like to turn things over to Commissioner Outlaw for an update on the investigation of Monday's shooting of Walter Wallace.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mayor. And again, good afternoon, everyone. As I said yesterday, this investigation has many moving parts, and we are working hard to ensure that a fair and thorough investigation takes place. We plan on releasing premise history, audio of 911 calls, and body cam footage of the discharging officers in the near future. Before that happens, however, we'll be meeting with members of Mr. Wallace's family to ensure they get an opportunity to view the materials first. On this call with us this afternoon are Chief Inspector Frank Venor and Lieutenant Jason Hendershot, who can answer specific questions regarding the investigation at the end. In addition to those two, also accompanying with me is First Deputy Commissioner Mel Singleton to provide details of last night's events. Now I'd like to speak to the ongoing civil unrest in our city. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge and thank our officers who continue to work long hours in extremely challenging circumstances in order to protect our communities. I also want to ensure the public that we are out here 24/7 and that public safety is our #1 priority. We hear you and we share in your frustration. What we saw yesterday throughout our city, but particularly in the area of Castor and Aramingo, had absolutely nothing to do with protest. The widespread lawlessness, including the burglary and looting of area businesses, served no purposes whatsoever. These individuals are doing nothing but simply wasting our precious resources. Let me be perfectly clear. This behavior is not acceptable under any circumstance, nor will it ever be tolerated. Regarding the civil unrest, while we have already made a number of arrests on scene, our investigators are still working diligently around the clock to ensure that there will be many more in store. At this point, we're able to present the following updates. There have been 23 injured officers. Injuries include various cuts and bruises, etc. These are from thrown projectiles, rocks, bricks, etc. Several officers also had something that appeared to be blood intentionally thrown on them. And fortunately, all 23 have been treated and released. As it relates to looting investigations, we have 297 reported incidents. As to damaged and vandalized vehicles, there were 9. Yesterday, there were 81 arrests that were made citywide during the civil unrest. The breakdowns are as follows. For burglary, 53, 8 arrests for assault on police, 1 arrest for aggravated assault, 4 arrests for robbery, 1 arrest for arson, 2 arrests for criminal trespass, 1 for vandalism, 7 for disorderly conduct, and 4 CVNs were issued for failure to disperse. I'd now like to turn it over to First Deputy Commissioner Melvin Singleton, who will give a timeline of yesterday's events.
Good afternoon, all. So starting at approximately 6 p.m. In the area of 5200 Pine Street, we had approximately 1,000 protesters form up in Malcolm X Park. That group walked westbound on Pine Street towards the district, which is at 55th and Pine Street. Eventually, throughout this particular protest, the group split up, formed back up again, and marched around the area of Southwest Philadelphia between Market Street and Pine Street. It eventually devolved into brick throwing. To the commissioner, she mentioned blood throwing out there with several officers being hurt. A vehicle was set on fire. And again, we had to make numerous arrests. Simultaneously occurring was a looting burglary taking place with approximately 1,000 people estimated at Castor Aramingo. We had set up in the city roving looting patrols as well as static patrols in the area, and this particular location of Castor and Aramingo also had that coverage. However, 1,000 protesters was not expected. 1,000 looters were not expected. We had zero information to warn us of this, and it required us to put ourselves into a priority calls for service configuration in terms of radio calls to free up officers to handle particularly and specifically the looting going on at Castor and Aramingo. This takes some time, however, to gather those resources citywide. We gathered the resources and got a necessary amount of officers to that location, but by that time, several stores had been looted and damage was done. In East Division particularly, we made 22 arrests. We had in that area 2 officers assaulted as well as 2 vehicles vandalized during that time. But to be clear, to the commissioner's point, we are continuing to and will always move towards and affect arrest of looters and burglars when they occur. In this particular situation, we had to call more resources to that location.
Thank you. Mike, I think we can open it up for questions.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner. Repeating again, because of limited time, 1 representative from each media outlet is permitted to ask questions, and we're unfortunately limiting it to 2 per reporter. We're going to start off now with Victor Fiorello of Philadelphia Magazine.
Good afternoon. This question is for Commissioner Outlaw or perhaps for Mayor Kenney, since you said you authorized the curfew. Is there actually any evidence whatsoever that curfews exist? That curfews are effective?
Commissioner?
At this point, I know, again, I can go off of our recent history here, recent history being in the last several months. curfews can be effective, but at some point we have to make sure that we are not only continuously evaluating the effectiveness of the curfews, but evaluating to determine if we're reaching the point of diminishing returns, because that can happen. I think they're a useful tool, but we have to be very intentional about when they're enacted.
And I also believe that as a certain percentage of people who abide by the curfew, we'll have less people on the street to deal with, which makes the job and the safety of the officers better.
Thank you. And last question for Commissioner Outlaw. Obviously, we've been through this before back in May and June, referencing the looting that's occurring. What did you learn from that back then, and how are you changing what you're doing now based on the results of that, which in many cases didn't work out so well?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, but I think it also implies that we didn't have any lessons learned and they weren't implemented moving forward. I want to be clear in that it's very easy to mobilize when there's things that are planned. And the nature of how these things pop up are very different than what they have been before. We find that when someone decides that they're going to loot, they don't necessarily plan it days in advance. It might be sent to a group thread via text that we don't necessarily have access to. I'm not telling you anything that we don't know. So because of that, we make sure that we have enough resources available so that we can be mobile and respond as we see fit. The difference now, what we're seeing between last night or incidents like last night and in previous months, is that we're seeing even more concentration on big box stores. But then also we're seeing concentration in areas where people can mobilize and congregate and come together in shorter periods of times based off of distance. So if there's a high level of residents, and that can be anywhere in the city, or a high amount of residents that can access an area by foot or by car quickly and get in and out, those are prime targets. We now know this. We didn't know that then. Castro and Aramingo, again, we didn't have any information about people congregating in that area in the past. In recent months, the looting and the rioting would begin after a demonstration in a certain area where we already had our resources, and then we had to go from there. So even then, there were lessons learned between last night and May, June, so to speak, but every day there's something different here.
I'm sorry, I feel like you're not answering my question. What lessons did you learn, and how did that change what you're doing now?
I thought I did, but if I'm not, again, lessons learned were that, and this is again, lessons learned back in May and June, these things can pop up spontaneously. We have to make sure that we have resources outside of just resources assigned to handle planned demonstrations or planned rallies or planned marches solely assigned to those events. We have to have resources outside of that available to mobilize and rove as looting teams. We put looting teams in place. But again, we have to, ideally, we want to have at least 2 officers for every 1 person. And we're finding that these crowds are, again, when they pop up like they did last night at Castor and Aramingo, they have the ability sometimes to mobilize quicker than we do and pull our citywide resources from other areas. So the lessons learned is that we have to not only have resources available, but we have to get there quickly and pay even closer attention to locations that may have been hotspots before, but we have to be willing and ready to acknowledge that there can be new locations in the future. This is a big city, and Castor and Aramingo has never been on the radar. So we just have to be flexible, we have to adapt, and we have to continue to improve as each incident or each night goes on.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner.
All right, thank you, Victor. Let's go now to Max Marin of Billy Penn.
Hi, this question is for Commissioner Outlaw. Mental health crisis response agencies that work with the city have long been trying to incorporate their services with the police department and be dispatched to scenes like this to provide de-escalation services. One such facility, the West Philadelphia Consortium, is located 5 blocks from Walter Wallace Jr.'s house. These agencies have been in contact with the police department. Have they been in contact with the police department to your knowledge?
What was the last part? Have they
Have
been?
these social service agencies been in contact with the police department to integrate their services?
So I have been in contact with, specifically there was and the name is missing me right now at the moment, but last night I had the opportunity to speak with the gentleman who, quite frankly, had been providing services to members of the Wallace family. And it's very clear that we need to formalize and provide some form of resource directory to our officers so they know what resources are out there and who's available and when they can be called around the clock, who and when to call. There's clearly a disconnect on our end as far as knowing what's out there. So there's a need for it. The conversations are ongoing and it's important. So the answer is yes, but it's more than just that one organization that's out there. I think that we need to have a partnership with, also in partnership with behavioral health.
And who handles that within the police department, those coordinations?
Well, there hasn't been any coordination. There hasn't been one sole person. So in other agencies, you'll see something like a behavioral health unit. We don't have something like that here, which is much needed.
When do you plan to implement that?
As soon as possible.
And Mike, do I have time for one more or no?
If it's quick, Max.
All right. There was a contract to provide more tasers to the department under your predecessor, Christine Coulter. What happened to that contract?
We have a line item in every annual budget, and we request for additional tasers. It's about 900,000, and we've been approved every year, including it up to the most recent budget. So nothing's really happened to it. I think what the conversation is today is, how do we ensure that we get enough tasers so that every officer, at least every officer that's working in operations, has a taser. And that would require at least around 4,400 to 4,500 tasers. Right now, we're at about 2,300. The amount around 900,000 really only gives us a couple of hundred tasers a year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Max. Let's go now to Doha Madani of NBC News.
Hi, thank you. So my first question is pretty simple. Will the 911 call be released? And when can we expect that if so?
Yeah, so the city has been in contact, city being the law department, has been in contact with the family's attorney to arrange a time to not only give them a heads up that we plan on releasing this information, but also allowing them to hear and review what we'll be releasing prior to doing so. And I hope to have that done in the next couple of days.
Thank you. And my follow-up, you mentioned that there's no behavioral health program with the department, but I saw that the Inquirer reported that there were something around the number of 30 calls regarding the Wallace home since May. Were officers aware of Mr. Wallace's mental health issues, and were any precautions taken knowing those issues existed?
I think that question was asked yesterday, and that's what the investigation will reveal. I think it's safe to say that once officers were on the scene, people were saying that there may have been mental issues there. But that's what the investigation will reveal, what was known to the officers at the time that they responded, what was dispatched, how that information was shared, and then how that information was utilized as it relates to the police response.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doha. Let's go now to Mark Morales of CNN.
Hi, everybody. How you doing today?
Go ahead, Mark.
I wanted to ask, the police union here has said, in addition to calling for a release of information, that Mr. Wallace ignored repeated commands to drop the weapon and lunged at officers with the knife. So now it's 2 days later, and I just wanted to ask, can you guys definitively say that Mr. Wallace ignored commands and lunged at the officers, or did that not happen?
I think when we release footage, again, I have every intention on being transparent and releasing footage. I think the footage will speak for itself. And we'll leave that to you to draw your own conclusions. But again, I am very mindful of being speculative during an ongoing investigation.
The other question I had was about the demonstrations and the looting. Have you, in the department, been in contact with community organizers and community leaders to know where official demonstrations are going to be so that you can be better prepared for where situations might get out of hand?
I want to be clear. So the answer is yes. That's a common practice. There are organizers that are very happy to share with us their intentions, what time they meet. The issues do not arise from planned events. We know where the planned events are. Issues arise from those locations and events that are not planned. And those individuals who are involved in the looting and rioting and these pop-up types of events, they have no acknowledgement of authority or the authority that police carry. They're not communicating with us. So this is not the normal crowd. It's very easy to say, look, we need you to be prepared because looting and rioting may happen at this corner. At this point, we have to do our very best going off of previous history. And again, finding similar demographics of areas that fit the mold of where we've seen trouble in the past. And we're seeing a pattern and trend and themes among big box stores. And again, as I mentioned earlier, areas that can be easily accessed and quickly accessed via foot or via vehicle, maybe allowing them a quick way out of the city. But that can be anywhere in the city, anywhere. So we literally have to ensure that we're ready to be able to quickly respond and mobilize as this occurs.
And there were things that we saw in the spring where a group of 1,500, 2,000 people would start off on a march, and then a group of maybe 250 to 300 would break off from the main group and go in another direction. Another 250 or 300 would go and break off into a third direction. And we have to have officers on bikes following those folks that are breaking off to make sure they're safe and that traffic is not, interacting with them. And that's sometimes thins out the cohort of officers following the main, that was originally following the main protest. So there's lots of dynamics that happen during the course of a particular protest. It's not always predictable.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Let's go now to Stefania Jimenez of NBC 10.
Hi, so I have a question about the agencies that are helping or assisting in security in the city. Which agencies are those? How many of them? And when were they sent in?
Mel, do you want to touch base? Are you asking specifically about mutual aid?
Yes.
And other police departments? Commissioner Singleton, do you want to address that?
Yes. So, we have the National Guard. They are not boots on the ground yet, but they will be. We also have the state police assisting us. Their numbers vary. We also have, if we can get them, mutual aid from our partners. I believe we had Chester County Major Incident Response Team respond to us and help us out last night. And so right now, those are the groups we're looking for help from, again, our mutual aid partners, from our county partners, to the extent that they can help us out, as well as state police, as well as the National Guard when they fully mobilize themselves.
Okay, so but which ones were specifically here last night? Is that just Chester County? Or is it Chester County and State Police?
Exactly. Chester County and State Police were here last night. Yes.
Okay. Now, the other question that I have real quick is just about the spring. We saw similar riots, looting, and all that stuff. It happened for a few days and then it stopped. So what do you attribute that to? Was that the increased police presence? What do you think happened there?
We're not sure, but again, someone asked the question of what are the lessons learned? I think some of the lessons learned is what the group of protesters or potential rioters are learning. They're learning very fast how to be more covert in their organizing, and they're utilizing devices and technology, group text, as the commissioner mentioned, to organize and move to locations that we have zero information on, and we have to cover down citywide. To the mayor's point, we have to be prepared to be mobile and be able to respond at multiple areas. To answer your question in terms of what changed and what quelled it, I'm not sure of. I would like to think that our mobilization of our resources, making sure that we cover down on all of our critical infrastructure, our known areas of malls, shopping malls, strip malls, areas to make sure that we stave off the looting. So I would like to think that that was it. But to answer your question, I don't think we fully know while it stopped, but we did increase our presence and footprint after day one of the looting.
All right. Thank you, Stefania. Let's go to Jack Tomzik of Metro.
Yes, and this question is either for the mayor, police commissioner, or Commissioner Singleton. When does the National Guard, when do you expect them to arrive?
I would rather flip that Commissioner Teal. He's done most of the work with him in the governor's office.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. We, again, as you heard, at the request of PPD and solely to help protect our city, made that National Guard request. There are no National Guard soldiers here in the city now, except we do have a liaison officer from the Guard here, and we are doing extensive planning with them to ensure that we, make sure that we're doing this, very carefully and very thoughtfully. So that planning includes the police department, the National Guard liaison, and several other partner agencies represented here on the call. We do not expect the first actual National Guard soldiers to arrive here until sometime on Friday. We don't know exactly what that number is because that's all still being worked out. And we expect more to arrive on Saturday. And again, this is all dependent on the situation. If at any point we see, as we would hope to see, this activity stop, then that's something that we can. It's still very flexible, so we can roll it back. But not. The short answer is not until Friday and then Saturday.
Okay.
And Commissioner, I apologize for not introducing you earlier. For the benefit of the out-of-town press, that's Philadelphia Fire Commissioner Adam Teal, who is also the city's Director of Emergency Management. Jack, did you have a second question?
Yes, just one more. The shootings last night, it seemed like there was a lot of shootings and increased violence. Was that related to the unrest? Was part of it related or all of it related?
I think there was one incident that was either related or was close to the area. It's too early to say that it was related, but I will say this, it's no secret, whether it's looting or shooting or homicides, that people know where the majority of our resources have been focused, and they use this as an opportunity to commit more crimes, which is why, again, we focus our efforts on priority calls so that we can pull bodies and address that. I think the missing piece is, we're not solely addressing civil unrest and protests and demonstrations. We're also dealing with the additional violence that's been going on in the city. So the short answer to your question is, it's too early to tell, but we do know of at least one shooting that was in close proximity to some of the civil unrest that was going on.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Jack. Let's move now to Matt Petrillo of CBS. Matt,
hi there. So I think that the police commissioner was saying that police didn't realize 1,000 people were gonna kind of loot these stores. Do you have any idea how they're communicating or how they know where to target?
So, you want me to take that, Commissioner? So, we believe that obviously they're using their cell phones. It could be mass group texts. We know that we're not seeing anything on social media about these pop-up locations. So we believe they're not using those platforms. So we believe that they're using their handheld cell phone devices and making decisions on to join up at particular locations.
The other issue, frankly, is the use of automobiles as a method of transportation to the looted site and then away from the site quite quickly. And it's hard for us to be chasing, a couple hundred cars that have stocked up with televisions and other things, and the officers have a hard time pursuing them because they're they're on foot, many of them, trying to keep people from getting into the premise in the first place. Anecdotally, we've also gotten reports to a number of New Jersey and New York plates in places that were hit that are close to bridges. And I think that the Aramingo Avenue location is close to probably 2 bridges. It gets to get into the city and out of the city quickly.
Thank you. Second question, are police being urged to scatter looters rather than arrest them? And what does the commissioner, if you can speak on, make on a video that's kind of circulating today of an officer kind of caught between a car door outside of a furniture store in the Northeast?
Not familiar with the video, so I wouldn't be able to speak to that, but absolutely not. That's not a tactic that I've heard of. It certainly did not come from me. I can turn that over to Commissioner Singleton to be very clear. And I think, as is evident by the arrests that have been made, no, a tactic is not, or direction has not been to scatter looters. Obviously, it could be that sometimes it's like trying to hug smoke, because that's what happens when an officer or a group of officers walk into a crowd of people, that they scatter. But the intention is that whenever we move with intention, and we move with the intent to do something so we can effect an arrest or to influence the direction of egress. But there's always going to be a purpose for our movements. So just having people scatter and then create the chaos that's already happening, no, that's not something that we do. Mel, do you want to jump in on that?
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure where the rumor came from in terms of what we want and what we mobilize for is to arrest looters, to find where it's happening and move additional resources, particularly to that spot, to make arrest of those looters for burglary. The configuration of being in priority calls only for service is designed to mobilize additional manpower or resources to the looting locations to make arrests. That's what it's designed for. So we have never issued an order to scatter any looters.
And I also want to say too, that comes at an expense, right? If we're saying that we're only answering high priorities for service, for example, shootings, injuries, or calls where there's injuries involved, or again, anything related to this looting or the civil unrest, that means that cold calls for service or calls that are prioritized as lower levels or non-priority, it may take us quite some time to respond. So that comes at a cost. And it's something that we have to balance each and every time. We've done it the last couple of nights.
All right. Thank you, commissioners, and thank you, Matt. We're going to go now to Aaron Moselle. But before Aaron, I want to caution that we're very short on time. We are going to limit questions to those who currently have their hands raised, and we are not taking questions beyond that. Let's go now to Aaron Moselle.
Just a quick question. You mentioned bricks and blood being thrown at officers. I've seen some unverified reports of Molotov cocktails being part of this unrest. Can you speak to that at all? Have you heard any reports? Have you gotten any reports to that effect?
Yes, we've heard reports, and Mel, you can chime in. But we've heard reports of officers saying that they're throwing Molotov cocktails. Again, they're bringing bricks in backpacks. I mean, we're not talking about little rocks and stones and pebbles. These are folks that are intentional on bringing certain things to hurt us, but also do everything that they can to try to demean or demoralize us, to impact us psychologically. So there's intention behind what they're doing here. And I think for us to try to simplify all of the events that have been occurring and say, okay, this is black and white and your response is cookie cutter and should be this, one way each and every time, I don't think that's feasible, nor is it realistic. It changes, and we have to adapt as we see them adapt. Commissioner Singleton, you want to add anything to that? I'm sorry, you guys, it looks like I'm starting to lose my voice a little.
So yes, we have seen in the area of the 5100 block of Market Street, a group of folks set an Xfinity truck on fire. We know that they utilize an accelerant that's being investigated right now on what manner and method of accelerant to set that fire. They also set 2 dumpsters on fire in the same area with the intention of pushing that towards officers. So they are definitely utilizing fire as a means to disrupt officers' efforts to keep the city safe.
And just a quick follow-up, any idea who these folks are who are using these Molotov cocktails? So they just city residents, or do they seem like they may be people from outside the city? Is there any sense?
We did make a few arrests, and those investigations are underway, and I'm certain we'll be able to give some update on who these folks actually are.
Well, what they are peaceful protesters, that's for sure.
And then I'd also add too, if anything, I think we do know that even if they do live in the city, they don't live in the immediate areas where they're causing this destruction. They're causing the destruction in one portion of the city, and then they have the luxury of returning home to their neighborhoods where it's peaceful and quiet.
Thank you, Aaron. Let's go now to Kennedy Rose of the Philadelphia Business.
Hi, my first question is for the mayor, or it could be also directed to Sylvie. I was wondering now, after day 2 of seeing widespread looting, does the city have any plans to implement similar financial aid programs like the Restore and Reopen program that was started back in June to help businesses affected?
Sylvie, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Kennedy. So at this point, we're still assessing. We don't have a plan at this moment, but it's under consideration. I think we're still looking at all of the, we have a full list of all the businesses as we're getting reports from our partners on the ground. So it's under consideration, but we don't have anything planned at this moment.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is for the mayor. Mayor Kenney, do you have any concerns about the effects of looting on business attraction and retention in the city, as several businesses have not only been hit now, but also back in June and then triply hit by COVID?
Yeah, certainly we are concerned about that business attraction and retention. These are obviously, extraordinary circumstances that have never happened before in a single year. And along with COVID, 2020 has been a year I'll be happy to see it go. I do have concerns about it. And when things begin to calm down, we can start getting back to having conversations with the businesses and the chambers and the rest, and to see what we need to do to help them stay in business and perhaps attract business.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Kennedy. Let's go to Kristen Johansson of KYW.
Hi there, Commissioner. I have 2 questions for you. One, are you reviewing any procedures or protocols you have in place now for how officers handled the type of situations that they did when they responded to Walter Wallace?
Yes. So I've requested our training, basically our training module. It's important to know what's being taught now, what's being taught not just now, but what some of our folks that have been on for quite some time were taught. And I think I spoke yesterday about there are a lot of critical decision-making models out there. I referenced ICAT. I was brought up to speed and learned that some of those principles are already incorporated into that. And, ICAT, again, is the integration of communications and tactics. So the answer is yes, but it's a plethora of things. It's not just how we respond to someone with a weapon, it's how we respond to someone in crisis. And that's not just at the patrol level. We also need to look at what we're dispatching, how we're dispatching, the types of questions that we're asking, what information is relayed to responding officers to help us determine response, and then shall we require a supervisor to be en route as well to assist with scene coordination. So yes, there are a plethora of things in the short term that we're investigating and we're looking at, and not waiting for months down the road or however long it would be for an investigation to glean lessons learned.
And the second question I have, I don't know if this goes to Deputy Commissioner, but there is a video that's circulating on social media of what looks to be like a car that's kind of being surrounded by a group of officers. It looks like it's in West Philadelphia. I do not know if it's authentic or verified, but there were some reports that children were inside of that car as it was driving down the street. Do either one of you have information on that?
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, I have not been made aware of a video of this type.
Okay, thanks. I can pass it along too.
Thank you, Kristen. Let's go next to Sherry Darden of Scoop USA.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just have a couple of questions. First, can you reiterate the timeline for the curfew? when it starts and the time for each day?
It's 9 p.m. tonight to 6 a.m. tomorrow. We will be doing these executive orders if necessary on a daily basis, not over a period of time. We believe legally we can do it. We can do it day by day, but setting up, between now and Saturday or now and Sunday isn't appropriate, and we'll reassess every day our situation from the night before and decide whether or not to implement another one or not.
Okay. And lastly, a couple of weeks ago, you sent out this nice press release about the 911 triage and co-responder program that was being implemented, I guess, in the next 6 months to a year. Since this has happened, has there been any questions or discussions about accelerating that or implementing it sooner?
Yes, I've had discussions today with some folks that are interested in perhaps helping coordinate these services. We have done it to a degree with the fire department and police department in the Kensington Avenue area, where we have warm handoffs where people who are addicted, mentally ill and addicted, or both, are taken by officers, not to jail in handcuffs, but taken to a treatment center or a respite. There are fire paramedics that are available also to assist in people who are having drug overdose issues. So yeah, we've been doing it to a large degree on Kensington Avenue related to the opioid and heroin issue, but we need to spread it citywide to take care of some of these other issues that we're encountering.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Sherry. Let's go to Holly Otterbein of Politico. Holly, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Hey, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yep, go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Holly, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
All
me?
right, go ahead.
Great. This question is for Mayor Kenney. Mayor, and I apologize if you've addressed this already. I missed the very beginning of the call, but did you have a comment on President Trump's statement earlier today on you and the situation that's going on in Philly?
First of all, Holly, nice to talk to you again. We miss you here in Philadelphia, and glad you see you're moving up. Or you're moved up. No, I don't comment on Donald Trump stuff. We have enough to do in the city. We have enough issues that we have to tackle, and he brings no positive help to any situation. So I'm not going to have anything. I'm not going to comment on his nonsense.
Thanks for the kind words. I'm happily still a proud homeowner in South Philly.
Oh, great.
And I had a second question, either for you or for the police commissioner, regarding the National Guard. Obviously, the focus is on the civil unrest right now. But when you made the request for support from the National Guard, did you ask for it in part because of the election? And do you anticipate them being here for the election?
No, our requests were for what's going on in the streets right now. We found that in the spring when they arrived and were able to guard assets, buildings, they were able to free up Philadelphia police officers to do the actual law enforcement work in the neighborhoods. They're very well trained. They're very polite. They have great demeanor, and they really enhance the situation. I believe that Governor Wolf may have been talking about having the Guard standing by in the event that there was some issue relative to the election, but that's a statewide issue. We want them and need them to help us create a peaceful atmosphere in the city.
And just to follow up, do you right now?
Holly, we're really out of time, and we've got at least 6 other questioners. So I apologize. If you want to send us that by email, that would be great. Let's go to Chris Palmer of the Inquirer.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I want to follow up on a question from the KYW posed. Commissioner, I know you said you weren't aware of a video of officers kind of surrounding a car and seeming to smash some windows in. Are you aware of any reports of things? We believe this was probably about 2 a.m. on Tuesday morning at 52nd and Chestnut, where a group of officers surrounded a vehicle. It appeared to, hit windows with their batons, and we've seen photos of a police officer holding a young child out of the car. Are you aware? If you haven't seen the video, are you aware of any reports of that kind of thing?
I'm not. This is the first I'm hearing about any of this, so obviously we'll have to look into it.
Okay, thank you. And then on the taser question, is there is there a timetable for when you would hope to have all of the patrol officers equipped with tasers? And is my math correct that you would need another about 2,000 of them?
That is correct. So I don't have a timetable yet, but I do understand that the city is supportive in ensuring that we have what we need. And if that means going beyond, I can't speak for the city. I haven't spoke to anyone yet.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
No, go ahead.
We are supportive of every officer having access to them. The issue is cost. And in the new world we're in of city budgeting, this is the budget we're preparing for we're living in is our third version. And it's the issue of resources. We can try to find, grants and other things from other governments, but, we have a lot of needs and a lot less money than we used to have.
All right. Thank you, Chris. We're going to go to Shannon McDonald of CNBC.
Hey, thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah,
yes,
there we go. We're just curious, can you quantify at all the amount of damage to the number of stores, both big box and small businesses, that have been vandalized or looted in the last 2 days?
Not at this moment. I'm sure we'll have some assessment at some point in time, but not at this. We're still in the midst of everything, so haven't had time to really do that assessment.
Yeah, I don't think we have any kind of dollar amount, but I mean, we know that it seems to be over 200 businesses citywide, and that could be a low ball estimate. It's hard to tell because a lot of businesses are also preventatively boarding up. So, but we're tallying all the reports that we're getting.
Great, thank you.
All right, Shannon, thank you. Let's go to Dan Cuellar of 6ABC. Dan, you'll have to unmute yourself.
Got it. This question is for Commissioner Outlaw. Commissioner, you were talking earlier about lessons learned from incidents that happened back in May and June in which police employed tear gas and pepper spray. Last night, we had 23 officers who were injured when objects were thrown at them. Under what circumstances will police be allowed to use either pepper spray or tear gas, and who will make that call if they come under attack?
Officers still have the discretion to use the OC that they carry on them. So I want to be clear there. When we're talking about tear gas or gas that can affect larger crowds, other than those who are that we're focusing on, obviously I make that decision. But what we've been doing in recent times is being mindful of where we are and moving quickly to mobilize, get officers there, push, utilizing, the shields and the resources and the bodies that we have, and quickly make an arrest. And that's what we've been doing. When we utilized tear gas last spring or in the recent months, we also had injuries there. So it's not only just a balancing act, but we also have to consider the environment in which we're in, the equipment that surrounding officers have, so that they can continue to be effective. And, I think there was a belief, or there is a belief, that all of our officers are equipped with gas masks. They are not. The only officers equipped with gas masks are specialized officers, and those aren't the only officers assigned to these incidences. So there are a lot of factors that are taken into that we've been taking into determination.
And when you go into a priority call configuration as you did last night, does that mean that you're not able to answer other types of calls, such as burglaries, stolen vehicles, missing persons, theft, or disturbances? And what advice would you have for residents under those circumstances when you go into a priority call configuration?
No, not at all. What that means is if there is, for example, a cold call, meaning someone needs to take or have a police officer file a report for something that happened, there's no suspect information, they may need to file a report for insurance purposes. Again, calls that are deemed non-emergency. There's no threat to an individual's being or property. That's what I mean by a non-priority call. So it doesn't mean that people should not call. I think people should still continue to call us, but I think there just needs to be an understanding of what it means. And that we may have a longer or a slower response time for those calls where there's no immediate threat of harm to property or to life.
Thank you, Dan. Let's go final two questioners. First, Meredith Haas of Temple Update.
Hi, I have a question in regards to Temple University and universities in the city. I know that there have been reports of some looting near the Temple University. So my question is just how will you be using and will you have to use resources to ensure the security of students, especially at Temple University, and should students feel safe while at the university?
Absolutely, students should feel safe. We are in constant communication with our partners. If we have, as with the events last night, if we believe that a crowd or unrest or harm or danger is headed in the direction of campus property, or somewhere where students can be impacted, we communicate this as soon as we possibly can to that agency to ensure that they have the amount of time that they need as best possible to mobilize their own resources in addition to ours. Commissioner Singleton, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and vice versa. When something happens on campus that we may not be aware of, the university notifies us immediately, and we work together in a coordinated effort to make sure that we both investigate and mitigate the situation. So we are constantly working together to make sure that the students and residents in that area are safe.
Meredith, did you have another question?
That was it. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
very good. Thanks. And finally, today, Mary Claire Dale of.
Hi there. Thanks, everyone. First question, I guess to the police commissioner or the mayor. Will the 911 call be released, a transcript of it or the video as well? And I'm sorry, the audio as well. And do we know, can you say who made the call?
Yeah, so I hope to release the printout or the purge of the call in addition to the audio. And from there, I think we'll be able to see who made the call. I think, again, after speaking with the family, giving them a heads up, making it very clear what we're going to release, we'll be able to add more information to what we're sharing with you.
But you can't say today who made the call?
Not today yet.
Okay. And secondly, I see from the criminal docket that he had been in, I believe, mental health court or had at least been assigned to mental health treatment following some prior court hearings. And I just wondered again about is the coordination, or the treatment in the program that, how can this have happened when he was already in the system? It wasn't somebody who wasn't identified,
I don't have an answer for that. I can't answer that.
I mean, clearly there could have been a better job done relative to the mental health issues. It's a big system. We have a lot of people that are experiencing trauma and are in need of mental health treatment. We have, limited resources and we have a large number of people with problems. We need to do a better job. We need to coordinate better, and we need to be more, precise about how we integrate the systems, police, fire, and mental health, and our Department of Behavioral Health.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mary Claire. And that concludes the briefing. I did want to quickly note we have received a number of emails from reporters and media outlets concerning the curfew and their work. So just to clarify, the curfew does not affect reporters' abilities to cover events in the city during the hours of the curfew. And with that, we will advise by email of any further avails on this topic. Thank you.